All right, are we back? Are we back? I don't even know, dude. Like, what a ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah, we're back. We're back. Good to see you, Cotton. Like, oh yeah, here's a great story for you. Here's a great story for you guys. Like so many stories today just are like just around to like completely be a total pisser. And this one really got me. The first photos and video of the luxury yacht Pangyos, scheduled to be launched in the kingdom and its cost revealed. This is Al Marsad newspaper. Look at this fucking thing. See that? See that? It's a yacht. You see this fucking thing? The Lazzarini Company is preparing to launch in Saudi Arabia the largest yacht in the world, which will be called Pangyos, for an estimated cost of $5 billion. The yacht, which will be shaped like a turtle, is expected to house 60,000 people and is a floating city that includes beach clubs and vistas and even shopping malls. The yacht is approximately 1,800 feet long, with a beam exceeding 2,000 feet. Like, look at this fucking abomination. Look at this fucking garbage thing. Look at this trash. This just, like, living human disaster. Like, fuck this thing. Like, fuck this thing.
Oh, everyone, listen to the intense and beautiful music that's being played while we show you this fucking living abomination. This grotesque horror show that should not, under any circumstances, legitimately exist. And yet, for some reason, we decided that this is a good idea. This is a thing we do. For sure. Isn't this something that only exists for the rich to play ostentatious consequences? Don't you feel like the only reason this exists?
Yeah, how many turtles will this thing kill? Yeah, good point.
Wow. It's so impressive.
I hope this thing sinks immediately. I hope this thing legitimately is a complete disaster. I hope that the people who go on this thing all get food poisoning. I hope that it is non-functional. That they get like 30 seconds of like, oh, hashtag beautiful, like putting on their Instagrams, right? All this kind of stuff. Yeah, we used to be proud to go to the moon. Yeah. Yep. Like, this is the absurdity of the moment. This is the absurdity of the moment. That we are captured in this idea.
Let's make a boat so grotesquely huge that other boats can go inside of it.
Like, this is like an homage to our disgrace. That like we are a failed people. We are an absolutely, completely disgusting people. Yeah, I love listening to John Rant while hopeful music plays. Magical. Absolutely mystical. Humanity will be improved now that we built a $5 billion turtle-shaped boat that's the size of 300,000 super cruisers. And I hope completely collapses the second it reaches the sea. I hope this thing hits an iceberg and sinks into the ocean. I hope that a meteor comes down from the sky and hits it specifically. I hope that when the krakens begin to arise from the oceans and take down super cruisers, this is the first thing they attempt to destroy. I hope that this thing shoots out from Saudi Arabia and goes into the ocean, and that the giant world turtle believes that this is another world turtle and attempts to have sex with it. And in the process of the world turtle attempting to have sex with this thing, absolutely crushes it into the ocean and destroys it completely before submerging back into the ocean, never to be seen again. Like, fuck this thing completely. I hope it gets smited. I hope that Jesus Christ returns and throws a cross-shaped lightning bolt at it. I think that this is an abomination. It should not exist. This is the kind of thing that if they made it when everyone had food and shelter and we were like putting moon bases everywhere and everything was going on, I'd be like, that's nifty and cool. But given the dramatic seriousness of the moment that we find ourselves in, the fact that there is literally anyone spending any amount of time to make this, how this conversation should have gone. How this conversation should have gone is that someone should have stood up and said, we should spend $5 billion to make a boat shaped like a turtle. And that person should have been slapped as hard as possible. Like, just boom, right in the face. And just been told, you are never going to talk again. Shut up. And then the adults should have said, okay, how are we dealing with the crises that exist in our society? How are we trying to help people? How are we housing people? How are we trying to ameliorate homelessness, poverty in our society? But instead of that, turtle. Like, I hope this sinks. I hope it sinks immediately. Looks like a boring stadium. The yacht will be powered by 9 all-electric engines. I hope the thing fucking burns out immediately. Like, and I hope they make like a movie about it so that they act as though it's like, wow, it's the boat that they never thought would sink and then it sank. And then we all treat it like it's fucking Titanic. We're all supposed to feel sad. Fuck, man. If this thing sank, I'd be like, sweet. There's justice in the world. Amazing. All right, I'm moving on. Moving on. Yeah. Majority of Canadians in favor of taxing homes over $1 million. No fucking shit. Right? The majority of Canadian residents are calling for a surtax on homes valued above $1 million amid high housing costs, according to a Generation Squeeze survey. Survey released on Monday found 62% of respondents will support a modest surtax on homes valued above $1 million, which makes up 10% of Canada's housing market. Of those currently living in million-dollar homes, 57% said they would be in favor of putting a modest price on housing inequity. Like, literally, the people who are living in the houses. Like, this is how disgraceful it's become. That even the people, like, you'd think that the traditional narrative would be like, well, I live in $1 million home. I don't want my taxes to go up. That would be unfortunate and bad because I'm the God King. I'm the only one that matters. I vote conservative because I want everything to be more expensive and terrible for everyone. Except me, obviously. But even those people are living in their $1 million homes going, yeah, I could probably pay more taxes on this, you know. I could probably pay more taxes on this. I think that this is getting to be a bit bullshitty. You know, I look around and I'm like, you know, I live in a house that's on a house that's in another house. And then I've got an entire house to park my cars. And I sort of think to myself, maybe I should probably pay more taxes. 57% of them are saying that. You know? Like, is it happening? Obviously not. Because we have to convince one person, and that person's the detached billionaire who lives on the hill, right? And he's just going to be like, nah. And so it's not going to happen. In a report released Tuesday, the Canadian Real Estate Association said the average home price in Canada fell to $756,200 in October, down 1.2% from the previous month. I love how we're talking about this. I love that we're talking about that, like, Housing went like it tripled in value, right? But now it's gone down 10%, and all of the reporting is like housing went down 10%. Oh my goodness, housing is down 10%. Oh my god, forgetting to like, yeah, housing went up 300%. Who gives it? Even if it went down 100%, who gives a shit? Like it went, and then it went, and we're all supposed to be like, oh my god, like shut up. Like it's so fucking annoying. $5 billion in revenue. If this tax measure were to be implemented, it would raise approximately $5 billion per year in revenue. Holy shit, guys. I think I found a way for us to pay for a gigantic turtle-shaped boat. We did it. Because that's the big question. How are you going to pay for this gigantic turtle-shaped boat? We know exactly how we're going to pay for a gigantic turtle-shaped boat. Tax million-dollar houses. If you put a tax on million-dollar houses, you would get just enough money to get a big fucking turtle boat. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not going to like put this tax on and then fucking help the poor, the meager, or house people so they don't need to go fucking kill themselves in maid systems, suicide booths. No. We're going to put a tax on the rich so that we can get them a big turtle-shaped toy. That's what we're going to do. That all these guys are sitting in their million-dollar houses being like, yeah, we could take a tax if it means we get a big turtle boat. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mission accomplished. We got him. Exactly. Jesus fucking Christ. Many poll respondents said their support for the tax would increase if the additional funds paid for income tax for the middle and lower earners, paid for more affordable housing, or helped slow home price increases. So, okay, that's nice. That kind of undercuts the point I was making, but that's still... Support for the surtax was highest in Atlantic Canada, 73%, followed by Saskatchewan and Manitoba, 72%, and Alberta, 68%. So once again, Ontario, the asshole of the country. I love that somehow we have configured it so that we think that Alberta are the assholes, but the real assholes live in the 905. That's the hard truth about Canada. If you want to find the dingiest, shittiest people in Canada, they live in Ontario, they live in the 905. No, not even close. Like, not even close. Like, people who live in the 905, Albertans. Like, and for some reason, Atlantic Canada keeps voting Liberal, so I don't get it. But the report said home prices in these regions are typically below the national average, and relatively few households own million-dollar homes. In British Columbia and Ontario, where around 25% of households own $1 million homes, only 1 in 2 respondents were in favor of the proposed law. Still 50%. Like, so, I love that they were, where the most wealth is, only half the people were in favor of it. So this is a slam dunk win, right? You win across the board. You're gonna piss off like 50% of the psychopathic rich, but the other 50% are like, yeah, that's fine. So, get yourself a lady that looks at you the way Milo does John. Yeah, that's I don't know. I think that'd be creepy. I think that'd be really creepy. And kind of annoying, actually. Like, when Milo looks at me like that, it can get really annoying. Trudeau, oh, I love this story. Trudeau deletes tweet that cited false information as it denounced the Iranian regime. I love it, man. Like, they're so excited to denounce the Iranian regime that they tweeted false information that was given to them by the CIA, obviously, right? And the Prime Minister said in an email statement that the tweet was based on reporting of serious concerns raised by international human rights advocates, the CIA, warning of possible future sentences, including the death penalty, imposed on thousands of Iranian protesters who have already been detained by the regime. Yeah, fake news. Fake news. Didn't happen. Canada denounces the Iranian regime's barbaric decision to impose the death penalty on nearly 15,000 protesters. These brave Iranians were fighting for their human rights, and we continue to stand united in support of them and united against the regime's heinous actions. Isn't it cool how we suddenly care about Muslims? Like, we suddenly care about the people who live in Iran. We suddenly care. It's the same thing with, like, the Uyghur story. Like, we suddenly care about these groups when, like, we literally have been carpet bombing the shit out of the Middle East for the last 20 years. And we're just like, yeah, fighting for freedom. Freedom, spreading democracy. Yeah. But now all of a sudden we're just like, we gotta, what's going on in there is a problem. And we're very concerned. We're deeply, deeply concerned about how people are being treated in these countries, you know, right? Yeah, obviously working in good faith, right? Obviously working in good faith. Feeling a little wound up there, Cotton? I can sense it. I get it from you, and I understand. I understand, man. Like, at least they had the at least they decided that once it came out that it was complete bullshit, they actually like deleted the tweet. Would have been nice if they also were like, yeah, we got that one wrong, guys. We got that one wrong, guys. Just... Yeah, Justin and Comrade G had a little chat at the G20. Yeah, I saw that. I don't think I've got it here, but like it essentially boiled down to like they had like a very brief exchange where Xi essentially said, look, every time we talk, what we talk about gets leaked to the press. We don't think that that's cool. And then Justin goes, well, here in the West, we do things openly and all. And China's just like, yeah, nah. Like, what's so fucked up and dumb about how we're acting towards China is like, China literally does not need us. Like, we are not relevant to them. Like, we have a population of 36 million. We've got a lot of resources, but like, we're mismanaging the shit out of them. We're really, really hanging on to these old systems that are completely dying and decaying, while China is doing everything it can to move past it and actually move past and move through it. No, it's not transparency. It's straight up not transparency. It's a way to besmirch China. It's a way to whip up public support against China. That's what it's for. It's not transparency, right? Like, China wants to have communications with a government, and China wants to be able to build trust and build support, right? Without having it turn into like a bickering squabble, which is exactly what our politics always is, right? From China and Russia and India's perspective, our politics is insane. Like, it's just like a constant bickering amongst children, where everyone is jockeying for position all the time, constantly, while ignoring the gigantic elephant of who actually has power. Like, it's crazy to me that we think we're normal. Like, that's the thing that I think is so fucking odd about us. Like, we're literally doing this just like absolutely disturbing freak show in front of the world, being like, this is normal, this is how society should look, and the rest of the world is like, if you say so there, champ, and doing everything it can to just like move away from us because we're crazy. We look crazy. We don't look like we have a handle on anything. We're ceding power to literally the worst people in the society, who turn around and do everything they can to gaslight and destroy the societies that are enriching them. Like, if I'm China, I'm looking at America being like, yeah, we had a period of time where that was happening, right? It was called the 100 Years of Humiliation, right? Where wealthy, powerful interests and wealthy, powerful people did everything they could to subjugate the populace, gaslight them and destroy them and keep them disorganized and destroyed. And it wasn't until we actually had like a leader come along who actually galvanized the people and got us together, and we had to fight a fucking war over it in order to actually get to where we're at now. And what am I seeing? Oh, I'm seeing that. Except without the actual like leadership and without the actual people coming up. I'm just seeing a collapsing society falling into decay that's going to have 100 years of its own humiliation. Absolutely. Like, America's already there. Like, there's already homeless people all over the place. There's systems of drug abuse. The police are in bed with the mafia in order to get as much drugs as they possibly can into the streets, in order to keep the populace disenfranchised, dislocated, so they can't actually organize, that they're constantly dealing with these overwhelming societal crises while simultaneously being abandoned as thoroughly as possible. And it's also that the oligarchs can just fade into their room, and then we expect China to be like, yeah, I definitely want to talk to you guys. Like, and then if China expects a little bit of discretion, we're just like, well, what about transparency? Get fucked completely. Like, get fucked completely. Like, I don't see any reason why China should talk to us. I don't understand, like, why we think we're special. I don't understand why we're standing here being like, well, China we're the greatest. No, we're fucking not. We're weird little Nazis bickering amongst ourselves, sucking the cock of people like Elon Musk. Just like, we're an embarrassment. And people like Xi Jinping are literally looking at us like an adult would look at a child. And that's the way he's talking to us. That's the way, and for real, that's the way he's talking to us. Like, we had an article, yeah. U.S. reveals what Biden discussed with Xi. And Xi Jinping is like straight up saying things like, history is the best textbook. We should take it as a mirror and let it guide the future. Adding the current relations between the U.S. and China are not in the fundamental interests of our two countries and people, and that the international community expects both leaders to improve that. A statesman should think about and know where to lead his country. He should also think about and know how to get along with other countries and the wider world. Like, this is what he's saying to us, right? He's talking to us like an adult that has his shit together, and we are little babies. And I'm not saying that right-wingers will say exactly what I just said, but they'll say it like, he's talking to us like we're babies. We'll show him USA. I'm saying it like he's talking to us like we're little babies, because he's right. Because we're little babies who think that we know better, and who are genuinely destroying ourselves right in front of their faces. And he's basically just saying, like, I wish you wouldn't. I wish you wouldn't. I wish that you'd actually read history. I wish you'd actually take a look at what works, at what is fundamentally correct and what is fundamentally false. And I wish you would acknowledge that the rest of the world community would really appreciate it if you stopped acting like a little baby. Like, stop destroying everything. Stop blowing everything up. Stop pretending like spreading liberal democracy is working, because it's not, obviously. Right? Stop pretending as though the solution to every problem is a bomb. Stop pretending as though you can just take your cock out, walk into the room, and expect everybody to worship it. Stop acting this way. And we're not. Like, we're not, obviously. We're not a serious people. Like we're very childish in the way that we look at things, and we're very dim. We're very dim-witted. We have no vision. We have no sense of vision. We have no, like literally the boomer generation, the people who are still a huge voting bloc, who still have an enormous amount of wealth and power in the society, are literally saying to the Gen Z millennial crew, like, go get a Tim Hortons franchise. Like, this is their big vision. This is their vision for the future. That, like, they refuse to acknowledge that, like, the interstate highway was built when they were alive. We don't have that. The interstate highway is already built. We can't rebuild it. It's there, right? The Trans-Canada rail system, already built. We can't build it. So what are you going to do, right? That all of these enormous government projects that happened while they were alive helped facilitate their entrepreneurship that they all jerk off about, right? Well, and now they're telling us, oh, just be an entrepreneur, while there are these enormous monopolies going around that have just ripped up everything. You can't be a small business owner anymore. Like, what total horseshit is this, right? Unless you actually bought a place 50 years ago, right? You're not going to suddenly, like, compete with multinational corporations that make billions of dollars a year. Like, that's not real. And they'll always do the same fucking thing where they're like, well, I saw a story where one person somewhere out in Nebraska somewhere did exactly what I'm suggesting. And I'm like, yeah, so one guy managed to do it one time, and that's the same as like if like, but we've got 1 million people. You're telling me 1 million people can just go do that? What's the problem? Like, shut up. Like, shut up. It's so embarrassing talking to these conservative boomers now, because it's gotten obvious. Like, the reason why they all like Biden is because they're just as demented. Like, we're living in this period of total dementia where the rest of the world is looking at us and going, yeah, can you guys not be psychos? Like literally all you have to do is stop being psychos. Like, maybe look at the world and be like, maybe there's a way to actually get access to those resources that are in those countries without committing an atrocity. But how? How could we possibly do that? If only there was a country that's been doing it for the last 40 years successfully. You know, if only there was a complete model that we could look at that would be easy to duplicate, where we could just straight up just admit to ourselves that this financialization of the system was probably a mistake, that the money doesn't actually matter as much as we think it does, that it's the assets and the actual things, the tangible material things that matter. But no, but we're too busy jerking off Jeff Bezos while he just like plummets Amazon into a crater, or people like Musk, as they show us how fucking sycophantic and disgraceful they are right in front of our faces. Like, I'm just so over it. I'm over the apologencia. I'm over it. Like, China is better than us. Like, I don't know what I need to say anymore. And I don't think it's an argument. Like, we suck. Our country is a failure. We're going into 100 years of humiliation. We're not doing anything about it. We don't care to do anything about it. And the solution that the demented fail sons are giving us is just start a Tim Hortons franchise or something. Like, shut up. Like, shut up. I'm over it. I'm over it. Our country sucks. It is a failure. It will continue to fail. If you've got a job, if you're doing what you're doing, just stay there. Do the least amount of effort you possibly can. Because any more than that, and you're just funneling energy into a system that is designed to fail and betray you. And it's obviously the case. Like, it's obviously the case. When the system collapses and fails, does the government and do people rush in to be like, oh, we got to keep this back up, and we got to make sure that people are okay, and we got to erect other systems, alternative modes, and all that kind of stuff? No, they literally hand a blank check to the people who collapsed the system and say, yeah, you know, better luck next time, I guess. Yuck. Like, what an embarrassment we are. What a fucking embarrassment we are. And we're just going to keep doing it. Like, this isn't going to get better. Like, that's the whole point of me doing this. It's just to remind everybody, like, hey, that little shred of hope you have in your heart that this is somehow going to improve, just get rid of that. Just get rid of that. Like, I'm here to create any kind of record I possibly can so that the next generation can look at it and be like, oh, like, all that was real. Like, there were people who were living through it, telling the truth about what was happening. There it is. Like, we literally are the worst. And just saying, like, well, who doesn't want a little bit of transparency? Like, you think that international politics and sensitive talks and sensitive communications should just be spread out into a bunch of fucking fascists who, like, elect Nazis and shit? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. In the meantime, humans could face a reproductive crisis as sperm counts decline. Humans could face a reproductive crisis if action is not taken to tackle a drop in sperm count. Researchers have warned after finding the rate of decline is accelerating. A study published in the journal Human Reproduction Update, based on 153 estimates from men who were probably unaware of their fertility, suggests that the average sperm concentration fell from an estimated 101.2 million per milliliter to 49.0 million per milliliter between 1973 and 2018, a drop of 51.6%. Total sperm counts fell by 62.3% during the same period. Research by the same team reported in 2017 found that sperm concentration had more than halved in the last 40 years. However, at a time, a lack of data for other parts of the world meant the findings were focused on a region encompassing Europe, North America, and Australia. The latest study includes more recent data from 53 countries. Yeah, just wait for like the CIA, just wait for the CIA report to come out. There'll be like another church commission or something like in 2042 or something. Like some harebrained Republican will just be like, we should probably know what the CIA's been up to, don't you think? Let's do another church commission. And then we'll do it, and there'll be like Operation Spermicide or something. And it'll turn out that the CIA's just been like bombarding us with like, yeah, microplastics or any of this kind of shit. Like, yeah. Want me to be a dad? Pay me and leave me alone. Yeah. Compton, you got it nailed, dude. You got it nailed. Yeah, super male vitality, exactly, John. Yeah, forget about science or facts or evidence or any of that kind of shit. Like, but said Sharp, these issues are not just a problem for couples trying to have kids. They're also a huge problem for society in the next 50 odd years, as less and less young people will be around to work and support the increasing bulge of elderly folk. This is my favorite part about all this, right? Is that, like, I was just talking about the boomers, right? These guys are fading into their old age and dying off, and there's no one's going to take care of them, right? Literally no one. And the only response that we can actually give them is, yeah, this is what you paid for. Like, this is what you wanted. You kept voting for this. Like, we kept telling you. And now here you are in this shitty care home that's bug infested, full of bullshit. No one's staffing it, right? Why? Because the pay is literally not enough to actually, like, did you guys know that one of the big reasons why COVID got into the long-term care system, right? I think it was like the Lieutenant General or something did a report because he was like, how did COVID get into the care homes? How did that happen? That shouldn't have happened. We should have systems, right? Well, they found out that 30% of people who work in these care homes live in shelters. 30% of the people working in the care home live in shelters. They don't have a home. They don't have a house. So they go to a shelter, which, what do you think's happening in the shelters? You think everyone's washing their hands and wearing masks and being nice and clean in the shelter? You think they got good shower facilities? You think everybody's nicely taken care of in these shelters that were erected to be temporary refuges, right? In one of the wealthiest countries in the world, we literally have places where people have to fucking spend their lives while working another job, right? Like, you know what, John, man? Shut up. Like, shut up. You're not cute. Like, you're fucking not cute. Fucking last warning. I will kick you out of here, dude. Like, shut up. Fuck. Fuck, dude. I'm reporting on actual shit. Go back to your fucking rich palace, you fucking cocksucker. Get the fuck out of here. Just unbelievable, dude. Like, I'm literally reporting on how there's fucking people who literally, reported by, like, the highest levels of my government, people who literally live in shelters and go work in long-term care homes, and you're just in there being like, oh, fake news. Fuck off. Because none of this fucking matters for you. Like, nothing. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Just get the fuck out of here. None of this matters to you. Like, none of this fucking matters to you. This is just a jerk-off for you. Because you're rich. And you don't give a fuck. Go back to your fucking rich job with your rich friends and laugh about how you were poking people on a commie channel. Get the fuck out of here. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Rich people, eh? Just rich, even sympathetic rich people. Like, just fucking losers across the board. Take nothing seriously because nothing matters. Right? Nothing fucking matters. You're just gonna go back to your fucking palace, go live in your fucking turtle boat. Right? And just snipe and talk shit all the time. Get the fuck out of here. My ex works at Target. They have 3,700 hours available this month. $15 hour. Yeah, that's 100 full-time jobs. I'm just like, Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ, man. Like, fucking rich people. Just fucking rich people, man. Like, the detachment is what gets me. Just the detachment. Like, this is just entertainment for them. This is just entertainment for rich people. Right? They're looking at this, they're just scoffing at us. That's all it is. They're looking at these extremely serious situations and this extremely serious shit, and they just scoff. This is just like porn for them. They're just sitting over there jerking off, right? They probably got porn going on in the background or something, right? Laughing at the misery that they're spreading, right? Happily contributing to it. Just gladly participating, right? They're never going to do anything. They're never going to fund anything. Like, this guy fucking John Smith, he's been in my chat for like, what, a month now? Never given me even $1. Right? Go fuck yourself. Like, just in there just to distract and be a fucking pain in the ass. Fuck. Fucking shit, man. Worth reporting. Freedom Convoy did not pose a threat to the security of Canada, CSIS director. So here's the director of CSIS, right? Our CIA, saying, yeah, it didn't pose a threat to the security of Canada, because it didn't. It didn't pose a threat to the security of Canada. Were they assholes? Yeah. Were they pain in the ass? Sure. They also protested effectively. They did exactly the thing they should have done. If they wanted to have an effective protest, they shut down a bridge, right? That's effective protest. Like, they're not a threat, right? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the act on February 14th, arguing its temporary and extraordinary powers were needed to end the blockades in Ottawa at the border crossing. The legislation said a public order emergency is one that comes from a serious threat to the security of Canada, as defined by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act. The definition includes espionage or sabotage of Canada's interests, foreign-influenced activities, or the violent overthrow of the government. The Public Order Emergency Commission, which is holding hearings in Ottawa until November 25th, is tasked with determining whether the government was justified in triggering the legislation. A document summarizing the evidence from David Villeneuve, director of CSIS, show he believed the process at no time posed a threat to Canada's security and that there were no signs of foreign interference. He felt an obligation to clearly convey the service's position that there did not exist a threat to the security of Canada as defined by the service's legal mandate, said the documents, which was released on Monday through the public inquiry. CSIS was, however, monitoring subjects of intelligence investigations who were taking part in the protests. Vigneault, who's expected to testify before the commission next week, advised Cabinet that invoking the Emergencies Act could further inflame extreme anti-government rhetoric. Rob Stewart, who was Deputy Minister of Public Safety at the time of the protests, told the commission on Monday that the government would have a more broad interpretation of what constitutes a national security threat. The Cabinet is making that decision, and their interpretation of the law is what governs here, Stewart told the commission, and their decision was evidently that the threshold was met. Brendan Miller, a lawyer for the Ottawa Freedom Convoy protesters, suggested that no federal agency advised Cabinet that the protest posed a national threat as defined in the legislation. You have the RCMP, you have CSIS, you have the entire intelligence apparatus in the federal government, and none of them said that this threshold was met. Did they? Miller asked Stewart during cross-examination Monday. They weren't asked, Stewart said. The government worried that the longer the protest went on, the more likely it was that ideologically motivated violent extremists would take advantage of the situation, said Dominic Richon, the senior assistant deputy minister of the National and Cybersecurity branch of the government. That was a significant concern for the security intelligence community, Richon said during his testimony Monday. By the time the act was invoked on February 14th, Ottawa streets had been barricaded by large idling trucks and huge groups of protesters calling for an end to COVID-19 public health restrictions for weeks, forcing the closure of many businesses in the downtown area. And on it goes. And on it goes. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the evocation of the Emergencies Act was a threat to protesters. You see what's happening in the UK, right? That this is sort of the proto beginning. What the state saying outright to our faces, this is what we're willing to do. If you do these protests, if you do this kind of stuff, if you protest effectively, we are willing to evoke war measures acts, right? Acts that are designed for like military invasions and shit, or enormous natural disasters or shit like this, right? No, we're going to use it instead. What are we going to use it for? We're going to use it to arrest people, seize their bank accounts. Like, Tamara Litch spent tons of time in prison. Pat King spent tons of time in prison, right? And the defense that liberals come up for this is, well, they're racists. So? Like, so what? You don't just round people up and incarcerate them because you think they're racist, even if they are, right? Guess what? There's literally no law against being a racist. Sorry. Like, is it despicable? Yeah, sure. I'm not going to spend any time with them. Should we make a law about it? No. Because who decides what is or isn't? Right? And if it's the state, well, what are we going to end up with? What do you think we're going to end up with? Like, we literally have the head of CSIS saying that these guys did not pose a threat. And a liberal government that, without even talking, that's the best part, without even talking to the Freedom Convoy, and now it looks more and more that they didn't even talk to the RCMP, they didn't even talk to CSIS, they didn't talk to anybody. So what were they doing this whole time? That's my big question. What were the liberals actually doing this whole time? When the Freedom Convoy happened, when it occurred, what were the liberals doing? They weren't talking to the Freedom Convoy, they weren't talking to CSIS, they weren't talking to the RCMP, they weren't talking to local police, they weren't talking to provincial governments, they weren't talking to municipal governments, they weren't talking to anybody. What were they doing this whole time? Turns out fucking nothing. Nothing except, you know who they probably did talk to? You know who they probably talked to a lot? Right? They probably had big conversations with the Thompson estate, with the Westons, with the Irvings. They probably had big conversations with their owners, right? Because those are the people that actually matter as far as they're concerned. And they were probably told, just evoke the Emergencies Act. That'll be fine. It'll clear this up right away, right? We'll get our bridge back. We'll be able to keep the money flowing, which is what it was always about. And if the public inquiry comes back and says, oh, well, you didn't need to do that, well, there'll be some lawsuits, a little bit of dust up, maybe some money will go one way or another, right? Just the cost of doing business. Just the cost of doing business. And what's scary about this, from my perspective, what's terrifying about this from my perspective, is that we're basically training the government to do this. The state is training itself to turn against the citizens. That should a left-wing version of this appear, right? Should a socialist, or dare I say communist version of this appear, well, the state knows what to do. It knows the song, it knows the dance. It knows what it can do, and it knows that it can get away with it. Even better, right? It knows that it doesn't need to talk to anybody. It knows that it doesn't need to communicate. It knows it doesn't need to do diplomacy. Not that we do diplomacy here, but it knows it doesn't have to, right? It knows that it can just evoke this, get it done, and should the court turn around and say, hey, you should pay this, that, or the other thing and all that kind of stuff, that's just the cost of doing business. And that's how things are going to happen here in Canada now, as we continue this decline. That we're just always going to have a government, and it doesn't matter if it's conservative, it doesn't matter if it's liberal, we're always going to have a government that's basically just going to have its finger on this button. And it's just going to say, like, yeah, just do it. Just clear them. Just get them out of here, right? So if you block pipelines, if you block the building of pipelines, if you block, I mean, for God's sakes, just take a look at what they're doing in the West Wetton, right? If you block a bridge, you block a road, you do anything important, right? You just, we know what they're going to do. They've declared it. And no wonder people are scared to actually go out and protest. right? No wonder people are actually terrified of actually striking. No wonder people are actually terrified of actually moving forward with this kind of thing. Because we literally have like draconian fascists openly telling us that we'll just throw cops at you. That's where we're at here in Canada and the West generally. And it's just going to get worse. Like, it's just going to get worse because we keep thinking we can vote our way out of it. Like, it's just not going to happen that way. Like, this is what's actually happening. Toronto and Ottawa mayors can pass laws with only minority support after shocking move by Doug Ford government. Premier Doug Ford's government is making the mayors of Toronto and Ottawa even stronger in a surprise move that dramatically undercuts the power of recently elected city councillors. Municipal Affairs Minister Steve Clark on Wednesday introduced strong mayor legislation that allowed those mayors to force passage by bylaws that align with provincial priorities if more than 1/3 of council members vote in favor. That means Toronto Mayor John Tory will be unable to enact some policies with the support of far less than the simple majority required now of the 26-member council comprising of himself plus 25 councillors. That gives the mayors more power and further sidelines councillors and the strong mayor system previously announced by Clark. It would have allowed Toronto and Ontario mayors to override council decisions on issues deemed provincial priorities with the support of 2/3 of council. Provincial priorities include building more homes, which could, for example, involve expanding the footprint of transit-oriented communities so more people can live, work, and play near the convenience of public transit, the legislation states. The mayor's ability to override the will of a large majority of council will be a surprise to councillors elected to new 4-year terms less than a month ago. Councillor Josh Matlow said he was horrified by the province's proposed changes, which he described as anti-democratic assault by Doug Ford on Toronto on our city. Matlow said the idea of allowing council to pass bylaws with minority support flies in the face of basic principles of democracy and noted that the Premier himself needs a majority of MPs to pass provincial legislation. To pass a motion with only 1/3 of council is just in no uncertain terms undemocratic, he said. That's not how any legislative body in Canada works. That's not how Queen Park works. Matlow called on Tory to publicly oppose the province's plan. Meyer Semyachiuk, a professor emeritus of political science at Toronto Metropolitan University, said the new powers amount to a shocking, unprecedented attack, not only on local democracy, but on local government itself. He said the effect of the new legislation will be the province effectively putting Toronto and Ottawa under trusteeship and reducing their mayors to the title of Chief Provincial Enforcement Officer. The province will undoubtedly tell municipalities what existing bylaws it wants removed or modified, and will use threat of withheld financial support to get mayoral compliance, he predicted. This amounts to a provincial takeover of City Hall. At Queen's Park, Municipal Affairs Minister Steve Clark said the enhanced powers for the strong mayors came out of our discussions with Toronto. These proposals are bold. I'm not going to walk away from that, said Clark, adding that it would provide some certainty so a strong mayor could more easily pass provincial priorities through council. NDP MPP Jessica Bell said Doug Ford is behaving in a very undemocratic way by changing Toronto and Ottawa's powers so the mayor can pass bylaws and legislation with just 1/3 of city council approval. Everything we know about representative democracy is that you need a majority to get a bill passed. This flies in the face of civic engagement in elected official powers in the basic tenets of democracy, said Bell. Interim Liberal leader John Fraser said, no disrespect to the Premier, but he's the Premier of Ontario, not the Mayor of Ontario. Green leader Mike Schreiner said, this is strong mayor on steroids. It's actually bringing in minority rule when it comes to the elected councils that we have a strong mayor only needed 1/3 plus 1 vote, said Schreiner. Yeah, this is being done so that they can just, instead of pouring money into city councils and instead of having a bunch of people to bribe, they only need to bribe one person. Like that's really what this is about, right? That as we have moved forward, the oligarchy is trying to streamline the process of getting laws passed, right? And this is just another way to streamline the process, to remove other people from the system entirely, and make it so that all we really need to do is funnel as much money as we can into the mayor's office, because getting 1/3 support is usually pretty easy, right? So all you really need is to make sure that you have the suburbs under control, right? So Etobicoke and all that kind of stuff, right? Just where the rich people live, like the detached rich people who don't, like fucking John Smith, who don't actually care, who aren't actually connected to the systems of support, who aren't actually connected to any of this kind of stuff, where it doesn't actually matter, right? Like, and so you just get a handful. So what do they need now? Like 1/3 of 26, right? So like 12 guys, not even, way less than that, like 8. Yeah, they literally need like 9 people. So if you have 9 people, you bribe 9 people, you can pass whatever law you like in Toronto. Like, the city is going to get completely hollowed out. You're going to have a completely detached group of narcissists who genuinely do not care if the city succeeds, who genuinely, like, literally their life is leave their mansion that their dad gave them, go to a Tim Hortons, and they can feel good about that because that's entrepreneurial and all the entrepreneurial spirit, and then go to Queen's Park, and then back again, and that's their whole fucking life. And when they want to go on vacation or something, they just get on their turtle yacht, right? And they're literally disconnected from reality. They don't give a fuck about, like, John Tory will always say, like, well, I take the subway every single day. Yeah, John Tory literally lives at the top of a skyscraper, and that for him to get to work on through the subway, it's literally the subway's right fucking there, and it takes him directly to his job, right? So he doesn't give a fuck about its expansion or its connection or its any of this kind of stuff. Like, I love showing this to people. Toronto subway map. Here you go. Here's the Toronto subway map, right? Here's the Toronto subway map. Isn't that great? So nice, right? Beijing subway map. Here's the Beijing subway map. Like, camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. So, who's the serious country that's actually being serious? Who's the actual, like, serious country that's actually being serious? Because, like, serious, unserious, serious, unserious. Literally is installing dictatorships to rule by fiat, where they just purchase the mayor and put them in place. Actually has a government. Free market, authoritarianism. Like, if this is authoritarianism, give me authoritarianism. Straight up. Like, if this is the argument that's being made by these fascists and these worthless neoliberal capitalists, if this is the argument that's being made, give me authoritarianism. It's obviously better. Like, it's obviously better. But John, you won't be able to get 58 flavors of ketchup. Okay. I couldn't care less. Like, I don't give 2 shits whatsoever. But John, you don't have the freedom to go work for whichever oligarch you want. Great. Perfect. Yeah. Have we talked about Trump running for 2024 yet? Come on, Ligon Z. Did you think that wasn't going to happen, bud? Was there even one doubt in your brain that Trump wasn't going to run? I do think that it might not be a shoo-in for him now. Like, if we want to talk about that, like, I think that this midterm election result has got enough Republicans kind of looking at Trump going, like, I think that ship has sailed. That the old narrative of Donald Trump taking power and being at the top of the chain and I'm the guy, right? I think that there's enough doubt now that the whole and I think there's enough internal, like, I'm hearing even people like Mitch McConnell, right? I'm hearing people like even Mitch McConnell going like, yeah, this whole narrative of like elections are stolen and the fraudulent kind of thing, people are really rejecting that. And this whole thing that Trump brought into the Republican Party and all of that energy is being widely rejected. And so I do think that it is possible that the Trump era is over now. He's still going to take a swing at it, and don't count him out. Don't count him out. Like, when it comes to seizing power and using power, Trump is very clever. But someone like DeSantis could dethrone him, because DeSantis could be seen as like a return to normalcy, a return to a more reasonable form, even though DeSantis is just as unhinged, right? Again, it goes back to all you got to do is talk softly and talk like you have competence. And you can say things like, we should abandon the poor to the maid programs because it's too costly to house them. Like, you can say that kind of shit as long as you say it calmly. And people will be like, yeah, that's a good point, you know. Yeah. Right? And I do think that there is, obviously the youth, like Gen Z, is completely bouncing off of this. Like, they're not interested in participating. And I think the Republicans are you know, they're interested in power for themselves. They're interested in destroying the civil society to harvest it for themselves. And so they got to convince enough gullible rubes to do that. And the reality is like, if you tell everybody that the election was stolen, then why should they participate in the elections? Right? Like, that's kind of the fundamental paradox of what Donald Trump did. And a real display of the short-sightedness of that strategy. Like, he tried to convince everybody that the election was stolen. Well, okay, if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, right, you're going to believe that the election was stolen. So now here comes an election that you've been convinced is fraudulent, that the whole thing is rigged, so why vote? Right? So it's like this fundamental paradox that while Trump is trying to cling to power and say, oh, it's rigged, it's what a rig, we got to overthrow it, it's such a rigged thing. Now he's going to turn around and be like, hey guys, it's election time again, vote me. Well, they're not gonna, because they think the system's rigged and it doesn't work in their favor. And I mean, the system is rigged, but it's not rigged that way, right? Like, that's what makes this conversation so funny to me, is that the system is rigged, beyond the shadow of a doubt, right? But it's not rigged between Republicans and Democrats, right? Like, it's not rigged in that way, that the Democrat that got the most votes wins. The Republican that got the most votes wins. Unless you're George Bush and then the Supreme Court appoints you. But, you know, most of the time, the guy that gets the most votes wins. It's just that they both work for the same guy, right? They both work for Vince McMahon, you know? So it's rigged that way. And so funneling energy into these campaigns with this idea that, haha, we're going to defeat the Democrats and then that'll make America better. Like, that's genuinely not how it works. Or we're going to defeat the Republicans and that's going to make America better. Like, it's just seriously not how it works. That the best that the electoral system can possibly achieve for Americans is minor piecemeal reform. So over the course of your entire lifetime, things might go from being horrifically unbalanced, just being horrifically +1 unbalanced. That instead of you working your life away for minimum wage, you'll work your life away for minimum wage +1, right? Like that's the promise of the Democratic Party. That literally we are going to just be ever so slightly better than open Nazi Christo-fascists. Like that's literally the promise. That the choice is this just raving lunatic, like we by not just policy, but also ideology, believe that you should be completely abandoned, that the civil society and any public service should be totally dismantled, that you should never be able to look at the government for any support, any help, anything whatsoever, that corporations should run and own everything in privatized systems, and if you can't make it in the system of corporate fascism that we openly support and espouse as doctrine, then it's a you problem and you should just go die. Here's the MAID system. Oh, and if you cause us problems, here's the cops. Right? So that's the Republicans. And then itsy bitsy eeny teeny weeny to the left of that, just like literally here to here, is the Democrats being like, yeah, man, I guess we'll like throw a couple $100 your way every so often, man. Huh. Come on, Jack. And that's it. Like literally that's politics in America. And I don't see the Democrats keeping the House as a big fucking win. I find it to be culturally interesting. That's what I think is the most interesting, because it does reflect a desire amongst the electorate to not be fucking Christo-fascist Nazis. Like, that's interesting. That they're looking at the Republican Party and they're rejecting them because they're lunatics. Like, that's interesting on a cultural level. But within the power dynamic, both parties are going, like, as fast as they can in the same direction. Like, literally, the Biden administration put forward, remember when it said, oh, we're going to cancel student debt, Jack. Come on, man, we're going to cancel some student debt for you, huh? Well, that just got overturned. The whole thing just literally got declared unconstitutional. It just got overturned. So fuck your student debt shit. If you're one of the people who walked in, voted Democrat, because you're like, they're going to do student debt relief, get fucked. Get completely fucked. You got nothing. Like, so that's Trump running for 2024. He'll run. I think that there is a credible threat in DeSantis now that post the midterms, like if that red wave had have actually happened, I think Trump had a big shot. But now I think there's enough internal support and enough internal people who are like, we do need to move in another direction. We cannot be these lunatics. Like we can't be overtly lunatics. We are lunatics, obviously. We're the Republican Party, but like we can't be openly so. And someone like DeSantis has the veneer of sanity, even though he's just as huge a lunatic as Trump is. He just talks with more statesman. Like that's what that's what North American people really want. They just want a guy to stand up and seem competent. That's really all we want. We're not really interested in people who are knowledgeable, empathetic, compassionate, who actually have a vision or a plan or a goal, who are interested in actually improving the country, who are interested in building civilization or a narrative. What we're really interested in is just a guy to stand up there and be like, I know what's going on. And that's it. And the person who can do that the best seems to be the winner. Ford was born a millionaire. He's a college dropout who never worked a real job. Also, John Tory, born a multimillionaire. Yeah. And these people are fail sons. Like, they have no vision. They have no idea. Their thoughts literally are, this democracy thing is a problem. Like, this is literally how they think. That they're just like thugs, goons, and vanilla losers. Like pushovers like John Tory, who literally are disinterested entirely in improving the civilization because it doesn't directly benefit them. Like that's the thing. Like if you actually want to have people in positions of power who actually are interested in improving the society, then our system of electoralism doesn't do that. It never did. It was never designed to do that. Our system of electoralism is designed to ensure that power stays in the throne, right? It was designed by literal monarchs here in Canada, and down in the States, it was designed by slaveholders, for Christ's sakes. And their objective was not to, let's listen to the voice of the people and then respond rationally to what those people want to do. It was designed to say, this place is run by a small minority and power should stay that way. And literally the only reason that there's an electoral system whatsoever is because the throne or the slaveholders recognized that people are more accepting of getting the oppressive bad news from the people who are actually in charge if it's done by a face that they voted for. Like, our systems of democracy are not bottom up, they are completely top down. 100% all of them. And the way to ascend them is to just look at the richest people in the room and say, yes, sir. That's it. That's how you do it, right? Just take a look at someone like Jordan Peterson, right? Just say, yes, sir, to the oligarchs and you'll ascend. Simple as that. I feel like I need more brain work to navigate the Beijing one. Yeah, I feel, although I don't know, it looks pretty, like if you lived like here, right? Like look, and you need to get over here, right? It looks pretty straightforward. Looks like they've done a pretty good job of like not trying. There are some subway systems that I've seen are very like up and around and swirly and are a bit like odd. This looks very like, we wanted to make straight lines, as little complication as we could. Excuse me. Love passenger rail, huge perk for city dwellers. Yeah. I listened to Trump's speech, boring, low energy. Yeah, he's courting the money. Yeah, he doesn't want to appear unhinged at the moment. Yeah, I mean, again though, like, all American politics is vanity projects. All of it. Like, all of it. There's very, 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 very few people who are in the system who are actually interested in building a civilization or improving the lives of people, right? They're very, very few. And usually when those people manifest, they get kicked out of the party, right? Like Dennis Kucinich, Ralph Nader, right? Like Ralph Nader was like, literally they locked the door to make sure he couldn't get into the conventions. Like that's literally the shit they did to Ralph Nader. And Bernie Sanders is well aware of it, right? So even if you believe that Bernie Sanders was is acting in good faith, which I think you could make that argument. I think it's believable enough that Bernie Sanders is acting in good faith. Like even he needs to corral it in and play nice, because if he doesn't, he knows what happens, right? If you don't, you get thrown out of the party. We've seen it happen before. So all American politics is just vanity projects, right? So Donald Trump didn't run to be the president of the United States because he cares about building a civilization or cares about any of that kind of stuff. He did it so that he could say, I'm the president of the United States. When Obama said that Donald Trump would never be the president, Trump was just like, I'll fucking show you. I'm not going to let some black guy tell me, and with all the racial slurs that come with it, tell me that I'm never going to be the president. I'll show him. And he did. And he did. He achieved it. He did it. Because Obama bruised his ego. Right? And it's just completely vanity projects. Like, I get to be the congressperson from Detroit, or I get to be the senator for Vermont, right? Look at me. Aren't I so special? I'm in the history books now. I get to vote on important legislation and be important. Supposedly Ivanka does not want to be involved. Yeah, I think it is starting to unravel for him. It just seems to be that the energy's no longer there. The red hats aren't really there anymore. And like Trump lost his last election. This midterm election is a loss for sure. So DeSantis will win. Trump looked weak, sicker than usual, and DeSantis will easily win against Brandon. I mean, it's possible for sure. Yeah, like the stream. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the things, hit all the bells, hit all the whistles. Yeah, it'd be really nice to get rid of the car loan and car insurance bill each month. Would save so much money per year. Canadian farmer and former army soldier from Saskatchewan died last week in Ukraine fighting, leaving behind a young daughter and wife. What a stupid war that is. What a just stupid, pointless war. It's literally just like achieving nothing. Just creating more efficient and more effective Nazis. That's literally that's kind of what that war has become to me. Like that's why the war goes on, is so that the United States can have more effective Nazi soldiers. Really, that's where they're training them. The survivors of that war, the Nazis that survive will emigrate to North America just like they did last time during World War II, right? And what do you think they're going to do here, right? Grinning says, my vehicle costs are crazy. I keep them low. Yeah. Like, replace your own transmission low. Yeah. That farmer is likely a military contractor. Yeah. Well, why else go? Like, why be there? And sorry, man, I'm not going to shred it. I'm not going to shed a tear. Like, I really am not. Like, oh no, a stormtrooper died. Like, I'm really over this support our troops thing. I'm like, you know what you're signing up for. Like, at this point, it's right in front of your face. Like, you know what you're signing up for. I don't. Who are these people who are actually walking around being like, our America's spreading freedom and democracy, and that's a legitimate thing that's serious and real? Like, who the fuck actually thinks that? Like, are you kidding me? Like, and sorry, man. Like, if your whole position is like, well, I didn't really have anything else going on, and so I thought I'd join the military, get myself an education, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, great. You're basically just trading blood for gold. Congratulations. Like, it's just. As far as I know, he was a volunteer, so his family doesn't get anything, no death insurance. What? I don't know, dude. Like, bye-bye. Bye-bye. You involved yourself in a conflict that you shouldn't have involved yourself in the first place, and paid the ultimate price for it. Like, yeah, U.S. military service is not honorable. I mean, it does... it's one of those things that I'm like, I don't openly flaunt or openly talk about very often, and if I meet military people, I'm very much like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't want to have a fight with them. I don't want to have a fucking fist fight. But we know what they are. Like, they're stormtroopers. That's what they are. Like, and there's no reason to, like, the only reason to pretend is so that you don't get fucking beat up. Like, that's really what it is. Like, you don't want to shit on them right in front of their face, because you don't want to get your fucking ass kicked. Right? Like, but they're stormtroopers. They're just like the faceless fist of the military, of the oligarchy, right? Like, we've got an oil field that we need to control. Let's send the military in, right? There's local leadership that's causing us a problem. Let's coup them, right? Like, we know what these people are, and this idea that, like, there's something honorable or dignified about it. And like, anytime these guys get into politics, they reveal themselves to be really, really psychotic, really, really fast. Take a look at a guy like Dan Crenshaw, right? Like, Dan Crenshaw, military man, right? Fucking lunatic. Like, fucking lunatic. But again, he talks like he's competent, and so everybody's just like, oh yeah, what a competent guy. And he sacrificed, support your troops. Even somebody like fucking Tulsi Gabbard. Like, the further and further we go along, the more and more she's just looking like a unhinged nut job, right? The decline of America is happening so rapidly that even people who should ostensibly be reasonable voices just get corrupted immediately. The way that someone like AOC did, like, AOC went in there being like, oh, we're a progressive voice and we're fighting for the progressive kind of thing. She literally votes for an apartheid. Like, literally just votes for every military bill you've ever seen. Right? The corruption happened immediately. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was 33 years old when he died in Ukraine. You know what, man? Good riddance. Good riddance. I'm so sorry, man. If you went to Afghanistan and you came back thinking anything other than this was a total shit show fraud, like I don't know how you're walking around in the world being like, yeah, this is a good thing. I'm doing a good thing. I'm on the right side of history for sure. If you literally went to Afghanistan, where like the CIA was literally walking around with death squads just randomly shooting kids in the street, like, and you come home and you think like, yeah, I better get involved in conflicts on this side again, absolutely. Then then sorry, man, I'm glad you're dead. Like I am. Like you are a stormtrooper fighting for a fascist imperial military. Like the headline is fascist died. Great. Yeah, life is so meaningless. I have to search for purpose in random wars. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's a legitimate thing. Like that's a legitimate thing that happens. Like Chris Hedges wrote a really great book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. And I remember reading it and just being like, "Oh shit, this explains a lot." Like this explains an awful lot. How people who feel adrift and people who feel meaningless, right, are going to funnel themselves into these sorts of pursuits because there seems to be something to it. That there's a reason why the Greeks turned war into a god, right? I blame mostly the media and the politicians for people going there. Tinker, I got to tell you, I think that there is a good component. I think there's a good amount of it is just literally like, I get to kill people. Like, I was having this interesting conversation with somebody the other day, and they said like, hey, there's been like a severe decline in serial killers. That serial killers are in decline, and we were sort of theorizing about why that was. And I think the theory we both agreed on and kind of walked away that is the most likely was that, well, the CIA is, and the surveillance system is probably effective. That they're probably picking these guys up before they become like serious serial killer threats, and like that there's a wider technology system. You can find these guys easier. But I've been thinking about it more and more as I walked away, and I actually think it's just because we have an endless war. Like if you're a serial killer, enlist. You want to kill a bunch of people for free and get paid for it, get rewarded, get badges of honor, become well regarded by your peers. You get to go to a place and literally like stand on a hill like a mile away from your target and just snipe them or shoot bombs at them, drop bombs at them, fire hellfire missiles or like machine gun fire. Like what do you want to do? How do you want to kill people? Right? What fuels your desire? What fuels your psychosis? Right? So you don't need to prey on people domestically anymore. There's an entire system for you. It exists. And you'll be well paid. You'll get the best education the country has to offer. And when you leave, you'll be able to have political ambitions so that you can get into power and then really kill a bunch of people. Right? Like, and I think that's actually the most accurate thing. Like, if I was a serial killer alive today, right now, I turn 18 or I'm 16 or 17 or whatever, and I recognize in myself this urge to kill, this desire to kill. Well, what would be the smartest way of going about that? Well, the serial killers of yore are probably not the smartest way of going about it, right? Because you can get caught. There is like a big surveillance system now. It's easy to get caught, or you can just enlist, and they'll just give you money to kill a bunch of people. Where'd all the serial killers go? They went to war. Like that sniper movie that they made. Remember they made that movie about that sniper, and everybody was just like, and he was like really glorified and all this. But then it started to come out like people who actually worked with this guy were just like, yeah, this guy was a psycho. Like the people who worked with him literally misaligned his sights so that he would miss targets because he would just kill random people. Like he literally would just like be sitting there with a sniper rifle, see somebody and just because he could, because there was no consequences for it, right? So you have this like open serial killer that we made a movie about. That like it was like Clint Eastwood made this movie about this guy, and he's like a serial killer. Like, this is what's going on. And then I hear this story where man from Saskatchewan dies in Ukraine, and I'm supposed to be like, oh, Canada. I'm just like, great. Like, a serial killer just got killed. Perfect. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And I don't feel bad saying it. The only reason I feel like saying it is because I know that at some point I'm going to say something like this. And then somebody's going to, like, come at me with, like, that guy was my father. It's like, well, I'm sorry to say, man. Your father was a serial killer. So it's like how people say, like, Stalin was responsible for ousting my family. It's like, well, what did your family do? They were Nazis. Oh. I don't feel bad. If he was hired by a mercenary group who's not serving, served term is reserved for people who voluntarily sign up for a country's military. He was a Canadian Forces military veteran. He served 2 tours. There are more Canadians going to volunteer in Ukraine. The idiots are posting fake face pics of themselves inside Ukraine. Yeah, they're all being identified by Russian intel. Yeah. Meat Cannon made a parody of Chris Kyle. He's a demonic entity wanting to be resurrected with the blood of a virgin. Yeah, that sounds like some serial killer shit right there. Right? Like, it just sounds like some straight up serial killer shit. Like, why is there a decline in serial killers? Because we gave them the perfect hunting ground and paid them to do it. Now, how do I pivot? I don't give a fuck about this. Yeah. $306 billion for Trudeau's warships. Cuts for workers. Right? Like, while the Trudeau government demands economic discipline from workers, new estimates predict that the government's incoming warship fleet will cost the public a shocking $306 billion. One of the largest acquisitions in Canadian shipbuilding history. According to new Parliamentary Budget Office estimates, the Trudeau government's 15 new warships, first proposed in 2017, will cost over $306 billion. The cost of a basic income, by the way, is $100 billion. According to Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Guiraud, that total includes $84.5 billion for construction and at least $219.8 billion to operate the ships. The purchase was first promoted in the Liberal government's 2017 Strong, Secure, Engaged report as one of the largest acquisitions in Canadian shipbuilding history. The new warships are designed specifically to replace the military's Cold War-era Halifax-class and Iroquois-class destroyers, and according to CBC News, are designed to follow British Type 26 or Global Combat Ship specifications, right? So they're just integrating themselves into the global network of terror, which is the international war machine that exists now, or NATO. A review of contract bids by Lockheed Martin, Irving Shipbuilding, and others leaves little room for doubt. These ships are made for combat. Alongside a tone array sonar system, the warship's design allows them to be outfitted with Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, an Aegis combat system, devastating Sea Scepter missiles, quad-packed ESSM guided missiles, and a long list of naval artillery guns. So when you're going to work, always remember, this is what you're paying for. This is what your taxes are, right? You're literally paying for your own destruction. It's right in front of your face now. That you're being told, work more for less, work your entire life away, grind it away into irrelevance, right? Why? So that we can get big ships to blow people up with. Like, we're not interested in diplomacy. We're not interested in it. We are an unhinged group of Nazis willing to spend 3 times the amount of a basic income, right, on war vessels. Sure, we could ameliorate the suffering of the disabled. Sure, we could ameliorate the suffering of the poor. Sure, we could create a social safety net to ensure that everybody has access to food and shelter. Sure, we could guarantee these things. We absolutely could, but got to get some more fucking battle cruisers. Absolutely. Like, this is what we're doing. This is who we are. We're the Nazis. While these war profiteers enjoy seemingly unending compensation, Canada's workers are facing austerity from the same government. In contrast to the $306 billion prepared for these warships, the 2022 budget allocated just $45 billion to the Canadian Health Transfer and $15.9 billion to the Canada Social Transfer. Elsewhere, the Trudeau government allocated just $3.5 billion for the whole of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and a mere $247 million to ensure all Indigenous reserves have clean water. On top of this, the same federal government is demanding that workers and the poor accept new cuts. Last spring, CBC News reported that the federal cabinet was reviewing options to place social programs under a spending review, similar to that seen ahead of the 1995 Liberal austerity budget. More recently, in a leaked cabinet memo, Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, demanded that new spending on social programs come from cuts to other line items or internal reallocations. On top of a 2022 budget surplus, Freeland told the Empire Club the government will plow ahead with its policy of fiscal restraint, while insisting wage increases and income support programs are off the table. We cannot compensate every single Canadian for all of the costs of inflation, Freeland said. We've got destroyers to buy. The warship purchase is a key pillar of the Trudeau government's plan to massively increase military spending to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, target of 2% of GDP, requiring tens of billions of dollars more every year. By all accounts, moreover, the purchase will enable Canada to launch new offensive military operations. In the 2017 proposal, the Trudeau government posits that these 15 warships will mark the recapitulation of Canada's military land and sea forces abroad in China. The fleet's predecessors, the Iroquois class and the Halifax class destroyers, themselves had a long history of belligerence. In Korea, the original HMCS Iroquois was tasked with maintaining the siege of Wonsan, the longest military blockade in human history, from 1951 until July 27, 1953, well after the official end of the Korean War. During the Cold War, Canada's warships were dispatched throughout the Caribbean extensively. In 1961, Canada's Navy deployed its ships to assist U.S.-led surveillance operations against Cuba. The next year, Canadian Navy personnel went further and prepared to join a U.S.-led blockade to, in the government's word, quarantine the Cuban Revolution. In 1963, the Diefenbaker government deployed a warship to Port-au-Prince during a coup attempt against right-wing dictator François Duvalier. In 1965, when the United States invaded the Dominican Republic to crush the country's left-wing rebels, Canada was eager to help. The Liberal government of the day sent its own warship to Santo Domingo to, in Defense Minister Paul Hellier's words, stand by in case it is required. And on and on and on and on and on and on it fucking goes. Capitalism makes war inevitable. Attached to that 2017 priority list is a map of the world, with Canadian forces extending outwards into Africa, Eastern Europe, Latin America, and Asia. These regions are, importantly, the top sites for our outflowing Canadian foreign direct investment. It's hardly coincidental that while Canada plots aggressively to project its military power abroad, Global Affairs Canada observes, outward FDI or CDIA has come to play an increasingly important role in the Canadian economy. As the Global Affairs report itself observes, Canadian firms are, especially in a time of crisis, eager to find new markets, lower cost inputs like lower wages and cheaper raw materials, and other sources of easy profits. Those profits, however, must be secured, and that security requires the constant threat of military force. This is imperialism, pure and simple. As the history of Canada's military interventions in Iraq, Serbia, Kosovo, Haiti, Afghanistan, and Libya demonstrate, these imperialist wars always come with grave human consequences. To To protect the capitalists and their profits, working class lives will be sacrificed again and again. This is what Trudeau's new warship purchase means. The fight against cuts is necessarily linked to the fight against imperialist war. The same capitalists who plundered the globe and benefit from war abroad are undercutting wages, benefits, and social conditions at home, with the eager aid of the Liberal government. Both must be fought to ensure decent wages, working conditions, and living conditions for all. This is what we're paying for. This is it. This is it. During this period of inflation, during the austerity, during everything, infinite money for war. Infinite money for war. And we could literally just and again, it's the same shit. It's the same fucking shit. The rest of the world views us as terrorists, views us as barbarians, and this is why. What kind of a people would actively abandon their own citizens, would actively say to them, we are going to make life harder, we're going to undercut you, we're going to plunge your wages, we're going to lay a bunch of you off, we're going to spread misery, spread despair throughout the society, cut your social services, make sure that you can't even get heat, make sure that the food that you get is scarcer and scarcer, make sure that life becomes harder at every single step of the way, but funnel billions of dollars, overwhelming sums of money into building machines of war. What do you think the rest of the world is thinking when they look at this? That we are obviously Nazis. We're obviously Nazis. And even worse. Even worse. Because even the Nazis weren't trying to also destroy the species and the planet. And here we are. And it's just getting... It's not getting obvious. It is obvious. We are at that moment where we do seriously get to say, if you've ever asked yourself, what would you be doing if you were living in Nazi Germany? You know exactly what you'd be doing. You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. Canadian military makes unsubstantiated claim about report exposing training of Ukrainian far-right extremists. The Canadian military is claiming, without specific evidence or examples, that a report linking Ukrainian far-right extremists to a NATO training program contained Facebook photos that were doctored to support Russian disinformation. Yeah, you didn't think our military was just going to let the claim that they train Nazis go undisputed, right? You didn't think the Ukrainian that the fact that they're training Nazis over there was going to go completely unsettled, right? You didn't think that they were going to let it completely slide, right? They'll end up arresting these people. That's where we're going to go with this. That the people who are reporting on the reality that our military is training neo-Nazis will eventually be arrested. That's what's going to happen to these people. Or they'll, quote unquote, have an accident, right? That's how the empire deals with these sorts of internal things. If you have the temerity and tenacity to report the reality of what we're doing overseas, i.e. we are funding neo-Nazi groups and training them with military forces, if you have the tenacity to actually say that and report on the fact that that's the reality of how we operate, well, there are going to be consequences for that. Right? Just take a look at people like Julian Assange. Take a look at people like Edward Snowden. Right? Take a look at the multiple people who, when they stand up and they report on the truth of what the military-industrial complex is actually doing, they tend to be punished for it. They tend to be destroyed. And it's a clear warning. It's a clear warning to any journalist or any person that lives in the society. If you do this, you will suffer. Very, very straightforwardly. The report's author, who published the study out of George Washington University last year, told the Maple he is prepared to explore legal options to defend his work against unsubstantiated claims made by any national government. The Canadian Armed Forces made the suggestion, which had not previously been made public, after being contacted by the Maple earlier this month regarding the documents obtained through an access to information request. The documents showed that CAF officials admitted in the fall of 2021 that they believed the report was credible and represented a continuous issue, not a concoction of Russian propaganda. Despite the unsubstantiated suggestion about the report, CAF admitted in an unsigned email to the Maple that it does not know which photos were allegedly altered and could not present specific evidence to back up the claim, instead deferring to Ukraine's Minister of Defense. Yeah, real trustworthy, right? You know you're in good territory when you're saying, oh yeah, it's we got to trust Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. That's absolutely what we got to be doing. The report published out of GUW in September 2021 revealed that Ukrainian military cadets affiliated with the neo-Nazi Centuria group had boasted online about receiving training from the Canadian military and other NATO forces at the Hetman Petro Satnachia National Army Academy. The report did not only rely on photos to present its case, but also extensively cited videos, text on social media channels, Ukrainian military's media reports, and other online publications and documents. While CAF referred specifically to Facebook photos, many of the images in the report were obtained from Telegram and Instagram. CAF would not say if they believed the allegedly doctored photos discredited the report as a whole when asked directly by the Maple. Like, I don't know, guys. Like, I'm glad to see that the Maple is doing like a thorough investigation on this. Like, look how big this article is. Look how big this article is. Right, this is a real big. I'm definitely gonna. There's a lot of good shit in here, but like, what kills me about this story? Like, what kills me about this story? Yeah, absolutely, dude. Here, I'll actually put this. I think this is a good article. Put this in the Discord. Put this in the Discord. What kills me about a story like this? Like, how is this just not commonly known? How is this not commonly understood? Like, our propaganda system has done a very, very good job of omitting and obscuring and obfuscating something that is patently obvious and directly in front of our face, that we have been funding neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine, and moreover, like, this is a completely believable story, right? Like, this is the part about it that really kills me the most. Like, how have we fought every single major conflict since World War II? Every single conflict, it's the same story. We find the far-right lunatics who are interested in destruction and death. We fund them, we arm them, we train them, and then we send them at the government, foment a coup, to have them overthrow the government, and then have them do military operations in order to stir up more trouble, to get other people involved in the conflict to achieve military objectives, right? And sometimes it is as clean as just, oh, we couped the government and now we're getting access to their oil, right? We couped the government and now we're getting access to their lithium, right? Or cobalt or whatever, right? And sometimes it is that clean and it is that simple. And what I just described fits Ukraine perfectly. That the Ukrainian government was overthrown by a coup. Who did we fund to do it? Far right nut jobs. And it just turns out that instead of it being jihadists, right, or some obscure thing that Westerners are like, that sounds real foreign and weird, right? And instead of giving them cute names like insurgents or whatever, right? Like, they're Nazis. And that's what they are. They call themselves Nazis. Like, they're walking around as Nazis, being Nazis, open in public, like with SS signs and shit. Like, and this is not a small group. It's not a small gathering, right? And we're all just like, and just the idea that it's not at all understood by the public is like, it's creepy. You know what I mean? Like, it's creepy. It's creepy that if I were to say, yeah, there's Nazis in Ukraine. Like, the Ukrainian military, like, these people are Nazis. That there's any pushback on that at all. Like, I find that to be really, really creepy. And I don't know what to do about it. Or how to articulate this any better than this. That, like, it's creepy that we are funding Nazi groups. It's creepy that we're training Nazi groups. It's creepy that our military is involved in this procedure at all. But what makes it really, really creepy is that when you talk about it in public, you're the bad guy. Like, there's a real, like, kill the messenger kind of thing going on. And Russian propaganda is Russian propaganda. Like, literally, you can show them whatever you like to show them. And people are just, like, dead to it. They're dead to it. And it's very creepy. I think it's very weird. Like, and it really shows you, like, there seems to be, it goes beyond a lack of interest, right? It goes beyond that. It's just this deep insistence that seems to exist within the heart of most people, that they want to believe that we're good. Like, they want to believe it. That people want to believe that all of this is done for the greater good. You know? That when they talk about Iraq, when they talk about George Bush going into Iraq, they don't talk about it like the moral abomination that it was. Like, they don't talk about the fact that it was as bad as anything Hitler ever did. Like, they don't talk about any of that. Like, they talk about it as if it was a blunder, an oopsie-doo. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Whoopity-doo. We had the right to do it, of course, and it was, and it's completely fine that we make these decisions. But, like, you know, it obviously didn't work out. So oopsie-doo. It was a strategic blunder, right? And you can paint yourself into believing that, like, oh, sure, there's this endless war and all this kind of stuff, but it must be for a greater good, right? It's got to be for, like, a greater picture and a greater good of some sort, right? And it doesn't affect me on the day-to-day. Like, the bombs aren't dropping in my backyard, right? And whatever, I just go work at this job, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't seem to matter to me, right? But we all intrinsically know, because the post-World War II anti-Nazi propaganda and the World War II anti-Nazi propaganda is, like, ingrained in all of us. Like, we've seen Superman punch Adolf Hitler. We've seen Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny and Popeye all beat the shit out of Hitler, right? We literally watched Indiana Jones just walk around indiscriminately shooting Nazis, right? We literally watched, like, The Sound of Music, where the Nazis were unequivocally the bad guys. That every piece of media that we watched where the Nazis showed up, there wasn't, like, the sympathetic Nazi. We knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you wanted to have a hero walking around just indiscriminately murdering people, just make them Nazis and you're completely safe. Nobody would stand up and be like, no, wait a minute. Those Nazis are still people and they're just following orders, you know? Like, nobody was going to do that. Everybody's going to be like, hi, yeah, he killed Nazis. Yeah. Yep. Boom, boom. And, like, the only moment in the entire series that anybody was like, was his dad, because his dad was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did that. Boom, 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 boom. Kill the fucking Nazis, right? Like, and so it's ingrained inside of us that, like, yeah, Nazis, you should not be funding, certainly not training or arming Nazis, right? That's just absolutely not what you should be doing. And so if you confront the average citizen with this, I think it creates a like, I don't think people can live with this information. I think that that's kind of the truth of it. I think that the average citizen that's actually walking around trying to live their life and not fucking commit suicide and not like destroy themselves simply cannot bear the weight of that knowledge. And I think that that's just like the hard truth. And the hard truth that I think I have to accept, that the citizenry is not yet in a place where it is capable. Like, I keep saying it, right? We're childish. We're a childish people. Like, we're very baby-fied and like very gaga goo goo in the way that we think about the world and think about ourselves. We're constantly trapped in a fight or flight survival mode, right? That most decisions that come out of the populace can be best understood as decisions for base survival, and that we're not making decisions out of a position of compassion or love or empathy or any of that, because we're not stable enough for that. Like, we're not stable enough for that. We still have mass systems of poverty and homelessness. Like, we're obviously not stable enough to also give a shit about one another, right? And in fact, that kind of comes later on in the story. Like, I take a look at the manifestations of, like, we're even struggling with the idea of having a good time. Like, what's the line that every comedian is dealing with now, right? That you can't do comedy anymore. You're gonna get canceled. All that kind of stuff. So, like, when you have a people who are desperately struggling for their base survival, well, they're not interested in having a good time. They don't know how to have a good time. And if you don't know how to have a good time, then you don't want to live with yourself. And if you don't want to live with yourself, you certainly don't want to live with other people. And that seems to be where we're at. Yeah, they talk about Palestinians like, oh, it's so complicated, or those Palestinians are not so innocent either. Yeah, they say the same thing about the Russians, right? Oh, there are Nazis in Russia too, you know. Yeah, but they're not integrated officially into the military, nor do they have seats in the parliament, you know? Honestly, John, I think most people just do not want to realize it. I've tried talking to people about this shit, and either they get scared and confused, or they shut off and get too tired to talk politely. Yeah, I think you're right, Conton. I think that that's what it is. That it's like you can talk about like jihadists or like right-wing insurgents in like Latin America, right? You can talk about those sorts of things because those all exist in the abstract. That those all exist in this kind of cartoonish Marvel world, right? So they can comprehend and understand those things in a very cartoonish, harmless sort of a way, right? And if they find out that the government is funding these far right groups and all this kind of stuff, maybe they can even take the position that, well, they shouldn't be doing that, but it still exists in this sort of abstraction kind of a place. Nazis are not abstract. Like, not to us. Like, our grandparents fought Nazis. Like, we all intrinsically know and understand that if the World War II veterans were alive today, they would be cursing this government. They would be seething. They literally would be saying things like, I went over there and killed Nazis, and you'll be goddamned if my taxes pay for a resurgence of these people, which is exactly what's happening. And so it's not abstract. Like, our families, our ancestors, the people who raised us, the people who laid the foundation for us to live in this world, literally fought and died against Nazis, only to have us turn around and fund a neo-Nazi insurgency a resurgence of neo-Nazis, to be trained by our military, to be armed by our military, to be funded by our military. Like, it's not abstract. And I don't think people can handle it. I think that knowledge can break people. I think that it can break people. And so I just think it's easier for people to just say Russian propaganda and move on with their lives. That's really what it is. That living in this dystopian capitalist hellscape is hard enough. It's hard enough. Just getting out of bed, going to the job that you hate, doing the thing that you think doesn't have any value, or if it does have value, it's very, very small scale in its importance. That's hard enough. But to also bear the knowledge that any amount of taxes that come off of your pay funds this is what you're funding, I think it's too much for people. I think most people really just want, like, this is why this country is such a failure. That most people, I think, are completely happy with working whatever job is considered valuable by the society, as long as it puts a roof over their head, food in their belly, and lets them get drunk on the weekend. I really, really think that this is the case. That for the vast majority of people, that as long as they're warm, fed, and drunk, and fucked, they're fine. They're not going to rebel. They're not going to even grumble. And if they do grumble, it'll just be like general complaining, the normal shit. But this Nazi shit, like, to know for sure without a shadow of a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, to know that you're on the wrong side. Like, because once you know this, you know you're on the wrong side. Like, we are funding Nazis. We are not the good guys. And I don't think there's an argument that could be made. Like, sometimes on the internet, when I get into this, people will literally say, oh, it's fine to fund Nazis as long as they're killing Russians. And I'm just like, okay, so you're a Nazi. Like, and that's the long and short of it. Like, if you actually think it's fine under any circumstances to send any amount of resources of any sort, to give any aid of any sort at any time to any Nazi, then you're a Nazi. And we know what happens to Nazi cultures. You can't actually build a civilization like this. It doesn't actually work. That it really is just squalling monkeys who ultimately implode and destroy the society with them. Like, and that's what's going to happen to us. Like, no doubt. Like, you cannot hollow out your culture in this pursuit of endless warfare in order to destroy everything around you and expect that to be sustained. It simply doesn't work. We see it over and over and over again throughout history. It simply doesn't work. That the British clear-cut their island. Like, how did the British Empire spread? It's a big question. Oh, it was just like an island. Like, how did they actually get... They literally clear-cut their island. Just took all their trees down and built boats. That's how they did it. And then they just spread throughout the entire world, and they were just willing to destroy everyone they met. They were willing to enslave people, willing to do violence. They would roll up to relatively peaceful places. And like the stories that you hear about the British Empire, like every culture has its like warrior class and its fighting class. But the stories that you hear is that the British were just grotesque and ruthless, like psychotic. That literally the warrior classes of other groups of people, other nations, were not ready or prepared to deal with the aggressive psychopathic nature of these guys. That other warriors were fighting for victory, and these guys were fighting for blood. Yeah, people are absolutely terrified in considering that Russia, a homophobic right-wing country, actually has a point and is doing the right thing. I mean, forget about the morality point of it. Like that's something I think that I like to bring up when I talk about this. Like, forget about the morality side of it. Like, the Russians should defend themselves. Like, it's completely reasonable for a people to look and see what was happening on their border and say, that's got to stop. Like, I think it goes beyond morality, or it supersedes. It says reconnection successful. I'm just going to assume we're back. It seems to work that way. If you were sitting in your apartment and someone just started chopping through the door, right? And you could see that they had guns. And let's say in this situation, you had a gun yourself. Well, it's not, quote unquote, doing the right thing to shoot these people who are chopping through your door. It's just fucking good sense. That's all that is. It's just fucking good sense. Like, you're not gonna talk about the morality of it. You're not gonna draw up an ethical dissertation. You're not gonna try to negotiate them, right? You're not gonna do any of that. You're gonna see that there's a bunch of armed thugs kicking in your door, and you're gonna shoot. Like, and this is more or less what I've come to see with the Russians here. Like, they literally have NATO-backed neo-Nazis destroying ethnic Russians on their border. Like, what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? But yeah, I've had people just chalk me up as the guy who thinks America and the CIA causes all the problems, just to dismiss me. But here's the thing, Cotton, is that we absolutely should just start saying yes to that. Like, this is the thing that I think, like, where it's gotten, is that just say yes. Just say yes to these people. Because a person who is actually saying to you, oh, you just think America and the CIA causes all the problems, still thinks that they're on the right side. Still thinks that they're not a neo-Nazi culture. Like, at least a fascist culture, and they obviously are. And the answer to that is yes, of course. Of course I think America and the CIA cause all the problems. These are the largest terrorist organizations that exist in the world. And it's not close. And it's not close. Like, anytime anybody lobs a critique at China or anything, I'm always just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Your own culture is literally like neo-Nazi fascists. Like, you don't have, like, obviously any criticism that a fascist society is going to levy at another is going to be bullshit. Like the Holodomor narrative, that the Russians were committing a genocide against the Ukrainian people, right? That's a neo-Nazi, sorry, not even neo-Nazi, that's a Nazi narrative that the Nazis created as propaganda against the Soviets, right? They can't help themselves. We can't help ourselves. That the only reason we have to even bring up another culture, another civilization or another people is to lie about them. That's the only reason we talk about them. That if the mainstream media is talking about Iran, is talking about Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, is talking about Syria, Libya, is talking about Russia, China, literally the only reason it's even bringing it up is to lie to you about it. And they can't help themselves. And so when somebody says, oh, you're just a guy who thinks that America and the CIA cause all the problems, the answer is obviously yes. Not just yes. Obviously yes. Like, it's time for us to start standing up with our spines straight and start actually saying to these people, obviously yes. Like, you're dumb if you think otherwise. It's a very dumb position to take, to say that America and the CIA are not the dark beating heart of the issues the global world population are facing. Why do you think China is the second largest military? Why do you think Xi Jinping is standing around going, we gotta prepare for war? What, you think he's doing that because he wants to? You think he's over there staring into a globe on Eye of Sauron being like, tell me, Sauron, what to do? Or do you think he looks at America and the CIA and says, that's a fucking problem? Seems like a problem. Don't you think? Here you have an organization of people who have not seen a year of war since, a year of peace since 1854. Here's a people who literally were founded on blood and slavery and genocide, who fall into civil war with themselves as often as they do with everyone else around them. But if you stand up and point it out, people go, you just think America and CIA solve the problems. And the answer is yes, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? Give me one single reason why I shouldn't think that. Like, what good has America done? What good has the CIA ever done? What have these things ever achieved? Who have they helped? Because they're not even helping themselves. That's the most embarrassing part. Yeah, sure, a couple of them get to go to like a pedophile sex island and rape little girls and shit, right? And fulfill their darkest, deepest desires and like worship Satan and Moloch and whoever, right? Some of them get to live in skyscrapers and do all this kind of stuff, go golfing all the fucking time, right? Sure. They're living these like miserable, weird little existences. Like, you take a look at a guy like Jeff Bezos, right? You ever actually looked at this guy? I think he's like hysterically manic most of the time. Like the quality of the smile that's always on his face. I think that he's deeply miserable in a deep kind of way. And that's why he keeps pursuing these outlandish, like, I gotta shoot myself into space. I gotta do ever aggressively more ridiculous things in order to justify all of this horror to myself and this misery to myself. And anytime you see him, he's got this like painted on like manic smile that seems fake, that seems forced, that seems like it's coming deep from a deep place of needing to hide the fact that he's deeply miserable. And like, these guys are all deep. Like, take a look at what's going on with Musk these days with this Twitter shit. You think this guy's happy? You think Musk is walking around like whistling and sunshiny? You think he's having a good time? I think you're looking at a deeply insecure, deeply unstable little boy who just happens to have billions of dollars. Like, this Twitter fiasco is essentially documenting it at this point. That again and again and again and again, we're seeing him react in ways that can only be described as either outrageously stupid or deeply insecure. That here's a guy who literally asks people on Twitter, hey, can you explain to me why this isn't working? And then they do. And then they do. Right? And they don't say, go fuck yourself. And they don't say, well, you're an idiot for asking this. They say, oh, well, this is what's going on. And then they get fired publicly for doing so. Like, that's a little boy who does not have a grasp on his own confidence or self-worth. And yeah, Bezos' smile looks practiced as fuck. Of course it is. All of these guys are fake. Like, all of their public their public image is all you really know of them. Right? And it works and it's effective. That's how, like, Bill Gates can destroy countries, go to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, and still be thought of as this, like, well, gee darn kids, you know. Like, it's exactly the way that it's portrayed on Futurama. It's precisely the same. That there's a character, Mom, in Futurama, who when she's in public is just like a dear old sweet lady, and she talks this way, and she wears a big Victorian garb, and she looks like a mumsy, and she's always saying things like, oh dearie me, I don't have quite enough in my coin purse, and oh, well, I'll have to speak with you about it later, it is all so lovely seeing you. And then when she goes behind closed doors, that mumsy outfit that she's wearing is actually an exoskeleton, a robot suit that she steps out of, revealing a withered, tiny little shrew of a woman who screams at everyone and beats her children up. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly how it works. And if you look at the propaganda surrounding these people, like Elon Musk's is some of the most overt and obvious that exists. The guy is literally trying to convince us that he's Tony Stark. The guy got himself put into Marvel movies. Got put on the cover of, like, Vanity Fair, trying to convince us all that he's this super genius inventor, when it's obviously fake and total complete bullshit. Total complete bullshit. Did Futurama get a reboot? That show is constantly in a state of rebooting. Futurama. I'd be surprised, actually. Reboot. No fucking shit. See, the difference between Futurama and The Simpsons was that The Simpsons, like, they keep airing it, but the family is no longer relevant, right? Like, the life that The Simpsons are living is no longer recognizable. That they basically exist as, like, a time capsule, as like an old picture of what America used to be. That we all watched The Simpsons. Like, I watched The Simpsons when I was a kid, and my dad watched The Simpsons when he's like 40, 50 years old, and they're all recognizable, right? Like, Homer is sort of a boobish oaf who is just sort of stumbling through existence, working this job at a nuclear power plant that he's completely unqualified for, but he makes enough for a house, a wife who doesn't work, kids, a car, they go on vacation, all that kind of stuff. Like, that was normal. That was considered normal. My dad ran an auto mechanic shop, and he had men hired, and that was their life, that they worked for him, and when they went home, right, they went home to wives who didn't work, they had houses, they went on vacation. I witnessed all of this. This was normal, right? This was just normal existence in the system. The Simpsons made sense. And now they're incomprehensible to us, which is why their plot lines aren't really entrenched in anything recognizable anymore. That they've essentially abandoned the the fact that they're a family living in America and they're basically just like they might as well be Bugs Bunny now, and so they're incomprehensible to us. Like they're much closer to Family Guy now, which Family Guy kind of has the same thing going on where Peter works at a brewery and Lois doesn't really have a job, and the house the same kind of dynamic, but they don't pretend as though they're like America's family. They are like Looney Tunes, you know, they're like Looney Tunes. And Futurama has a benefit in that it was never entrenched in that reality that Fry and Leela and Bender are recognizable to us because they're just working schlubs, right? Like they all work jobs and they all live in shitty apartments, and it's just like, oh, that's somewhat recognizable to us. But then also there's no roof to the story that can be told. Like The Simpsons, there's a roof, right? Like the story needs to exist in small town America, or if it doesn't exist in small town America, it needs to move to a city. But it's always like it's got to be human beings, right? Everything's got to be like somewhat comprehensible and somewhat within the realm of reality. Right? Futurama can basically just do what it likes. Like, and I think that's the fundamental strength of this show, which is why it's always baffling to me that The Simpsons is still on the air and Futurama isn't. Because The Simpsons ran out of gas like 15 years ago. Maybe even sooner than that. Like, really, really just like is coasting through because the people at Fox are like, this is what kept us afloat during the worst times. These are cultural icons. They've kind of hit that sort of Flintstones position now, where like the Flintstones are always on television all the time for some reason because they're recognizable characters, and we're like, oh yeah, the Flintstones, ha ha ha, Barney, Barney and Fred, what are they going to get into, right? All that kind of stuff. But like, they're not meaningful anymore. Like the Flintstones are not meaningful anymore. They're not the center of the culture. Neither are the Simpsons. And I always found that really, really odd that Simpsons is still on TV, but Futurama isn't. Because the storytelling potential of Futurama is infinite. You can tell any story you like. Fry is the perfect everyman, right? Everybody that watches Futurama takes a look at Fry and simultaneously sympathizes with him while feeling superior to him. And that makes him perfect. He's just the perfect protagonist for us to layer ourselves on. And then whenever he says something really dim or stupid, we all just get to go, ha, classic Fry. And it's perfect. And then Bender is absolutely his perfect foil, because Bender is absolutely an aspect of ourselves. Like, we're all this rapacious, self-centered asshole. We all have that in us, right? But he's so aggressively in that direction while simultaneously not being a human. So we all get to recognize that in ourselves while not feeling bad about it. So we get to revel in it a little bit. And when he and Fry get into it with one another, we get to feel good about ourselves because we know that we're better than these guys, even though these guys are us. We're all as stupid as Fry, and we're all as mean as Bender. And then Leela is another perfect addition to this because she's the prudence side of ourselves. The moral good aspect, which we all hate and we all kind of think poorly of, and that's why Leela comes with a certain degree of like loathing. Why we like Leela, we understand Leela's perspective, but we all kind of are like, oh, fucking Leela, right? And the three of them work really well together as a single consciousness, right? That we all see Leela, Bender, and Fry as aspects of ourselves, and so any story that you want to tell, you can fit into one of these lenses and tell that story really, really, really effectively. And the sky's the limit, right? Every story just begins with delivery crew ends up on this planet of whatever you want. And I just always thought it was odd that Futurama struggled with the studios, that Futurama struggled. Like, it gets canceled and then rebooted, then canceled and rebooted. I always thought that was really, really odd because the storytelling, like, it's such fertile territory. And I've said it again and again on this channel that, like, I really do think our storytellers, like, we're out of gas. Like we don't really like all our storytellers are working at Starbucks. Uh, I'm actually convincing myself to write a script and try to get it pitched at Netflix because I genuinely think that Netflix is out of ideas. And the thing that has finally convinced me that Netflix is out of ideas is their most recent pitch at me for a show. They're like, "Hey John, you might like this show." Literally, it's called Warrior Nun. The little trailer they had was like a woman running across a body of water, you know, like Jesus did, right? I'm like, dude, you guys are out of ideas. It's time. If you're sitting over there listening to this thinking, "Oh, I've got a script in the back of my head that I've been thinking about for a while," write it down, pitch it at Netflix. They are out of ideas. That's what I'm going to do. Here's the story idea I've got. I've started writing it. It's a land of holidays. And so you've got Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween. And Christmas has encroached through Thanksgiving's territory until the point where it's almost on the border of Halloween. And Halloween and Thanksgiving go to Christmas and say, "Hey, yo, this isn't cool. Stop this." Christmas pretends like it's going to stop, but then doesn't. Wipes Thanksgiving right out, goes right up against Halloween's border, and then starts encroaching on the territory even as Halloween is erecting a barrier, right? Erecting walls and all this kind of stuff. And Christmas starts to infect it so much and get past the border so much and like insidiously doing it that finally Halloween goes, "No, it's time for a," title of the film, "War on Christmas." Yeah, evocative. I think it's a lot of fun to write it. There's a lot of good musical numbers. I think it'd be very entertaining. And I think the title alone is really going to reach in and grab people. War on Christmas. Yeah. And the whole thing is just about how, like, Christmas has been commodified, that the spirit of Christmas no longer really exists, that the reason why it's spreading is so that it can just commodify everything around it and make more money for itself. And that it doesn't really represent itself any longer. Christmas doesn't really exist anymore. Like, I'm sure that there are people in the world who use the moment of Christmas as an excuse to think about giving and compassion and friends and all that kind of stuff. But the holiday, that's not what it's about anymore. Like, it's capitalism. It's just capitalism. Labor Day breaking a sweat, yeah. It is really weird that that Futurama eats L's and Rick and Morty was a big thing. I think Rick and Morty has two real benefits over Futurama, which is that first of all, Dan Harmon is just a better writer. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love Matt Groening and I love the writers on Futurama. I think they did some really good stuff. I thought that the Going Back in Time episode, they won an Emmy for this episode where it's take that, screw you, causality. Like that was a really excellent episode, and they deserve that Emmy, and they deserve all the accolades. But Dan Harmon is a better writer, and I think that really shows in. I think Dan Harmon understands people better. That while the characters that exist on Futurama are good and strong characters, like Zoidberg is a strong character, like and they're all very strong characters. But Dan Harmon really understands human beings and how humans are and how they exist in the world and what drives them and what motivates them, and he's really willing to like. Rick is a bad person, right? Like Rick is a bad person, a deeply flawed person. I think this is really what Rick and Morty got and what Dan Harmon gets more than the writers of Futurama is that we actually love flawed characters. Like we really, really love, and not like flawed like Fry is dumb, haha. Like Bender is mean, haha. You know, Leela is uptight, haha. But like actually self-destructive, like really like narcissistic, doing self-harm. Like we actually really like those kinds of characters. And Harmon really gets that the more deeply flawed you make your character, the better their redemption arc can be, and the more road you've given yourself, and you can really see that in the character of Rick, and especially like this season. That's like, usually you expect a show to have like a strong first season because that's the labor of love and that's where all the effort goes in. And then it starts to decline until finally it jumps the shark, and that's kind of where you expect it to be. And with Rick and Morty, the first season was strong. The second season was even stronger, probably the apex of the show. And then the third, fourth, and fifth seasons kind of did experience that little decline. It wasn't as rapid. It was like the steady, what you expect, like the steady decline. And now season 6 is the best stuff they've ever done. Like, certainly as good as anything that came out of season 2. And it's because I think they took a look at what they were doing and how they were writing, and they said, okay, what is the show actually about? And they realized that the show is about Rick and Morty. Like, the show is about these characters. And by limiting Rick's power because his portal gun stops working in season 6, spoiler alert, they're able to actually focus on those two and the family, and focus on all those characters and what that means. And so they're telling really interesting and deep character stories within this universe. And I think this is something that also Rick and Morty gets even more than Futurama, because they have an interdimensional portal gun. They can go wherever they like, they can do whatever they want, and they really take advantage of that. That like, and they've accepted that it doesn't need to make sense for it to be good. Like, you go to a world where the people are telephones, and that's it. That's the world, and they're just like, okay, and they just run with that. And so, like, to me, I take a look at Rick and Morty, and I do think that Rick and Morty doesn't find its legs without Futurama. I think Futurama is like the stepping stone, right? That the cultures generally sort of accepted this level of science fiction storytelling, and so Rick and Morty was able to get to the next level because of it. But they definitely have gone over what Futurama laid down. That the characters are stronger, more deeply flawed and deeply human. And I think I'm getting a sign from the universe. We have reached that time. We have reached that time. I hope you guys are all doing really well out there. I think this stream really convinced me. I'm going to lay down a rule. If you're some rich guy who is watching this, I'm probably going to ban you. I think I'm going to make that a rule, because I'm not really interested. Like, I'm not your entertainment. I'm not here to be your little weird side project while you're jerking off. Like, I do hope you're all doing really well out there, you know? These are odd times. These are strange and weird times. And the only way we're actually going to get through it is by reaching out to our neighbors, reaching out to ourselves, reaching out to the people who are around us, and building real support systems that don't rely on the quote-unquote official power structures. Because we're seeing those power structures degrade before our eyes. So if you don't know your neighbors, maybe try to learn the name of your neighbors. Build a little coalition. Mutual aid. And always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being. walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.